Welcome. In front of me is a POCO C65, and today I'll go over unboxing, kind of, along with a quick overview of the phone itself. The reason I'm saying kind of is because I have already unboxed it and run out of storage while recording and didn't realize it, so we're just gonna start over and voila. Quick unboxing, boom, that's everything that is basically in a box. We got a charger, a cable, and a phone. Now, no case if you're hoping for that. Cable here is a Type-C to Type-A. Obviously, charger is Type-A. And the charger right here is pretty garbage at 10 watts only, which kind of disappointing considering the device itself can charge at 18 watts and comes with a whopping 5000 mAh battery. So pretty decent battery right here. Once you boot it up, also you will be presented with this display right here. This is a 6.7-inch display running a 720 by 1600 resolution, so it is on the lower end, and it has 90 Hz refresh rate at least, and a peak brightness of about 600 nits and typical one of 450. It also boasts about a 260 pixels per inch, making it, like I said, not a very sharp display. Now moving on into the internals, we do have a Helio G85 processor that has either 128 gigabytes of storage with 6 gigs of RAM at the lowest end, which is pretty good starting point, and goes up one other option, giving you 256 gigabytes of storage with 8 gigabytes of RAM. So doubles the storage and just adds you like 2 more gigs of RAM, which is still pretty good. But like I said, the base version of this, the 128 with 6, is already pretty good starting point for a let's call it a budget mid-range device. I would consider still in a budget range, but it's catering a little bit too high to mid-range, being at about 170 euros, give or take. So it is a little bit too high priced, at least for what I think it's in here. The only thing that would make up the value here would be the processor, which I have no clue how well it compares to other devices. Actually, that being said, I'm gonna check it out right now, because this will be the only defining factor for this device. And if it compares to something like, let's see, Snapdragon 680, it's not a very great comparison, and it's below that. Yeah, so yikes. It's not a very great starting point if Snapdragon 680 is the starting point. Just gonna check one more thing. So Snapdragon 680 was released in 2021, so nearly 2 years ago, and it was already a low-end processor. This is below that processor, and yeah, I have nothing positive to say, to be honest, for this price. So I'm gonna level with you. This device, I believe, is a little bit too expensive for what it offers. So I'm gonna continue with the rest of the specs, and then at the very end I'm gonna just kind of give you an insight of why I consider this to be an overpriced device. So anyway, I did talk about the processor and the RAM and storage. 5000 mAh battery. We can charge this device at 18 watts, which, like I mentioned, the charger is only 10 watts, basically reducing your charging speed by nearly half. It's a good charging speed for a device. I would say 18 watts. It would have been good or better if they actually gave you a charger that can charge at this speed. Otherwise, you're buying a cheap device that doesn't even provide you with the full charging capabilities of itself. And chances are, if you're upgrading your phone and buying a cheaper device, you might not have a charger that charges faster than 10 watts, making this one be replaced by older 10 watt charger and still not being able to charge this device at a full capability. Begging the question, why even include this shit right here in the box? Now, continuing on, we can touch upon on the cameras, which are another disappointment for the most part. At least 33% of them is not. So the main sensor right here is a 50 megapixel f1.8 28mm wide lens with PD-AF. That being said, this camera will probably be taking just sufficient enough photos for the price that you get to pay for this device. What later on below that is disappointing is the 2 megapixel macro. I'm not even going to go more into specs because just saying 2 megapixel and macro after that should speak volume, considering we have a 15 megapixel wide sensor, which at 2 times zoom will capture higher resolution, more detailed photos than the 2 megapixel macro dedicated lens that is supposed to do that. Begging the question, why the is it on here if it's not serving any additional benefit which you get to pay for? Fantastic middle finger from POCO here. And then even bigger middle finger is the 0.08. That's not even a 0.1 megapixel. What they're calling auxiliary lens. Now I have no clue what that is, and based on the megapixel and the name, it just sounds like dog shit camera added just to make it look like we have 3 cameras instead of 1. Now, I'm one of those firm believers that prefers 1 camera if it's good, and not 3 that will occupy the space just to make me think that they're providing me with more value. I'm not a dumbass, I can see the specs. They're shit, so don't include them. I get to pay for something that I don't get to use. Why? So, if you're looking at this in a perspective, we got 3 cameras, they must be good. No, they're not. The only camera that you will be using is this one. You could take a hammer, smash those below 2 cameras out, and you wouldn't feel any kind of difference. So, now that we talked about the back cameras, the front one is just an 8 megapixel sensor. Now with both front or back, you can record videos at 1080p 30 frames. Again, nothing really special right here. So, now concluding this, this device comes a little bit too high to mid-range prices, which I would consider start at like $200. That's where I at least draw the line of mid-range starting point. This is about 170 euros for that price, or actually 180, closer. So for this price, I believe it's just way too close to this kind of thing. If this device was coming at like 150, maybe even lower price tag, then that's fine. I would say that this device is okay, but if we're approaching the 200 price range with no discernible value for that additional money compared to something that would cost you, for instance, $130, then I kind of start to question, why would you go for this when you can, for instance, either spend less and get nearly the same experience, or spend more and get better experience. Now, what I mean by that is, when it comes down to lower end devices, or the ones that basically start off from like 100 going to something like 300, right? So I am covering from low to mid-range phones, but the additional money gives you massive amounts of additional performance, something that you don't get to see at high end. After like $400 to $1,800, there is little difference in terms of performance. So as an example, greatest example for this would be the Flip and the Fold 4s, right? So from Samsung, Flip 4 costs nearly $1,000, Fold 4 costs $1,800. They're both the same spec devices, just one has a bigger display, and that's all. And yet you get to pay nearly double the price for that device. So I just wanted to point that out. So as you can see here, not much additional value for the nearly double the price. And for $800 additional dollars, you can have like nearly 4 of these, for instance, right? And between like the 1000 and 1800, you don't have much of a benefit outside of the bigger displays. So I just wanted to point that out, kind of explain this. I highly recommend maybe starting or looking for a device at a higher price range, somewhere between like $200. It's only $20 more, but going to mid-range devices that will have a faster processor or better display will add to the experience of using it, making it more pleasant, either making the looking at the display much more nicer. So for instance, having something like an AMOLED display or faster refresh rate obviously will contribute to that, or faster processor, which will mean that opening apps and just switching between different applications will feel much snappier, faster, and obviously again added to the enjoyment of using the device. This device doesn't really add anything. It has just mid display, mid processor. The charging speed is again mid. It's nothing, there's nothing adding to that additional like $50 of value that you get to, or price tag that you get to pay for, compared to some other devices that would be cheaper. Now, I'll give one recommendation that probably will be completely out of the price range of what you might be looking for, but I highly urge you to just kind of look into it, as it's also the same company, but that device that I'll just kind of point out is what I would consider one of the best value for dollar. So that would be the POCO F5. Not the Pro version of it, because that one is even more expensive. But it's a device that will probably cost nearly or a little bit over $300 now. It is a device that was released, I believe, like a year ago already. But it comes with a much better display, processor, battery, charging speeds, and all that. It's better in every single way. It is in a higher end of mid-range, I would classify, but it basically competes with like almost flagships. Obviously it sacrifices a bunch of different things. The processor isn't a flagship processor, but it's damn near it, and I would highly recommend looking into that, just so you can see that the difference here, paying like 100, maybe 150 more, will get you a insanely better device compared to what you have right here. And then, that being said, from that device upwards, you won't see much of a difference almost at all, especially if you're the casual user. If you're more like intensive user, you might, for instance in gaming, but even that device at the price will be able to hold its own against like more demanding games. So just wanted to kind of point that out. It's the POCO F5. I understand it is going to be probably outside of the price range that you might be looking for compared to this one, but even so, I do recommend maybe checking out other devices, maybe even from Xiaomi, as they do have phones that are better value than I believe this one is. So anyway, with that being said, if you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and thanks for watching.